All right. Well, welcome to another Run Wild with Us, Ask Us Anything. I'm Lisa Kastner. I'm the founder and executive editor of Running Wild and RIZE presses. And I'm here with Peter Wright, one of our amazing acquisition editors and overall editors. And we are typically here with you on Thursdays between 5 and 6 p.m. Pacific time, 8 and 9 p.m. Eastern time to talk about whatever you want. It could be about publishing, the craft of writing. If you've got, you can ask us, whatever you want. Who knows? Maybe you'll come up with something that we haven't heard yet. That's actually always a really fun conversation when it's something that we haven't heard yet. So if you are watching and it is Thursday between 5 and 6 p.m. Pacific time or 8 and 9 p.m. Eastern time, then and you want to ask us a question, all you have to do is go ahead and toss it into that comment section. Then what we do is we will repeat the question, and then each of us will take a turn at responding to that question. And now we have Ben, another one of our amazing acquisition editors and overall editors. How is it that you look like you're glowing in the dark with that sweatshirt on?
That's my glow in the dark sweatshirt.
It is.
I am glowing in the dark.
You are glowing in the dark.
Yes.
It's your new superpower.
I look like I'm shrinking between you two.
Actually, yeah,
set up straight.
That's sort of weird.
I'm here because everybody was thinking that Peter and I were the same person, so we had to show up on screen at the same time.
Exactly.
Well, I thought you were the same person, so I can see why everyone else did. Well, now I understand why. Now it makes more sense how much stuff you guys get done, because there's two of you instead of one.
You're wondering why you only got replies to your emails from one of us, but that's just because one of us is really lazy, and it's not Peter.
Yeah, it's not Peter. Okay, no. Well, that's good to know. Caroline Davenport says, "Hey Lisa, hey Peter, hey Ben, great to see all of you. Great to see you too, Caroline, as always." Caroline's one of our regulars who's with us. Obviously, if she's a regular, she's with us every week. And she has in the past come up with some pretty fascinating questions. So it's always a good time when we get an interesting new question. So, but now I'm going to ask the generic question of, so guys, how's your week been? Anything new and exciting going on?
No.
Been busy with the house remodel and working on my novel and just having everything torn up and bare floors, appliances all over the place. Other than that, everything's going good. Weather turned warm. We did not get snow. Did you get snow in LA?
We got snow in Irvine. Yeah. So, a friend of mine posted, I mean, it was like huge things of hail, just all over the place. Yeah. I'm actually in Arizona right now. And driving to Tucson, man, snow, all the mountains are just completely snow capped. It's pretty amazing. So
wow.
So how about you, Mr. Ben? How are you doing?
Doing well. We're cold, 48 degrees, and the spring winds have kicked in. But Albuquerque was getting snow today, but out here in Rio Rancho we weren't, which is really kind of weird. Because usually Albuquerque doesn't get any because it sits down in a valley, and the winds push the snow away. But they got a little bit today. Not a heavy bunch. It's dusting, but the mountains are pretty.
Oh well, that's cool. I think. Yeah. Yeah, I've been traveling this week. I was in Phoenix for a little while.
Feedback. I got to reboot.
Oh, okay. I was in Phoenix for a little while because, with all the articles that we've had written, I kept getting feedback from different magazines saying, you need to get a professional headshots because this just isn't going to cut it. We can tell you did it on your iPhone. So I finally sucked it up and went to a dear friend who is an amazing photographer and I'll post the pictures when we land on the ones that we like the most. So it was an absolute blast. We spent pretty much all day yesterday going through and just doing different kinds of like headshots and different poses and all that. So it should be a good time. And then I figured while I'm in Arizona, the Tucson Festival of Books starts tomorrow. So screw it. I may as well just stick around. It's this amazing free book festival that it has tons of just fantastic writers. So, and then I'm heading back on Saturday. I'm not staying for the whole festival, but I'll be there for a little bit. So that should be fun. And then in the meantime, we finished editing the follow-up memoir to Mickey the Giveaway Boy, which is called Mickey Surviving Salvation. Robert Schaefer, who was the original author of Mickey the Giveaway Boy, he actually passed away about 2 years ago. And in his will, he asked his daughter to complete his follow-up memoir about his childhood. So she and I have been working on that for a while. So super excited. And we should probably have it out in 2020. In 2024. Yeah. So that'll be a lot of fun. And I'm still working on those novellas, man. We're getting there. I just started round 2 of the editing process, so that'll be fun. And then I have a couple other books that we're in the first round of edits or the second round of edits. So like I said, we're slowly getting there. We've got a couple of more editors on board who are have signed up for some of the titles that we acquired, a little while ago. So they're partnering up with the authors to start that collaborative process. And then yesterday, actually, I had the good fortune of doing a recorded Q&A with Jonathan Mayberry, who's the New York Times bestselling author. He publishes in a variety of genres, won tons of awards. And we were asked to do this Q&A for BookFest, which is a totally online festival. I believe it happens twice a year. And this next one will happen on starting April 1st. So guys, look for that. It was a whole lot of fun. Whenever Jonathan and I get together, we're both dorky and nerdy, and the conversation goes really fast. It's like it was a 45-minute Q&A, and it felt like it was 5 minutes. So definitely look for that. That was a blast. And then today I just raised my hand to work on an essay. And for those of you who may not know, my original background in writing was more in nonfiction, like journalism and essays and things like that. So for me, I'm really excited because I get to go back to my roots of doing, more like interviews and research. Like I'm a research nut. I love doing research because you always find out new and interesting things, or at least I do. So I'm really super excited about that. So if my background looks different, it's because I'm in this cool little Airbnb studio apartment that I got for while I'm here in Tucson. So it's a good time. Holly Rose says, "Is it me or do you guys keep freezing up?" So far, I'm not freezing up. I know that Peter was having issues, and so that's why he came and left and came back. I don't know, Ben, are you experiencing any challenges?
No, you're not freezing up with me at all.
I just restarted my router, and things are much better now.
You're definitely much clearer. Holly, you might want to reboot your computer if you're having some kind of internet issues, or disconnect from your internet and then reconnect and see if that makes things better. Teja says, "How do you overcome writer's block?" All right, I'm going to punt that over to Peter. How do you overcome writer's block, young man?
To be honest, diligence. Just sitting at the desk with your notebook or your computer and just writing. You can even write, I mean, some advice is just start writing anything until a story idea kicks into play. I think I saw that in a movie once. But just write. I mean, writer's block is only kind of like a fear of getting things wrong or not writing the best thing possible the first time. So it's not going to be the best thing. It's going to be the first time. So just go through it, push through it, and get to the other side, because you're going to have a lot to work with once you get that first version done, the first draft done. So I just say keep working.
How about you, Ben?
I would agree with Peter, but it reminds me of the baseball player Tony Gwynn, the old San Diego Padre. He said, "How do you handle a major league curveball? You hit the fastball. So how do you avoid writer's block? You just don't get it. Avoid it. But no, it's like Peter says, you pull back into your creativity and work with some of your favorite words. If you got favorite words or you hear a new word, look at it and explore it and look at the letters and how it's shaped and what it does on the page for you. It's just a little mental exercise, which for a poet it turns into a poem. But for a prose writer, it may turn into a paragraph, and then okay, I've got other ideas coming, and you may be stressing too much on what you're trying to write. Sometimes it's good to break and just write something else, something short, something. What'd you do today? Some dream journal, whatever. It comes down to what Peter says. It's just keep writing. You're right.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if anything, have your character just do something completely out of character, just completely zany, and go with that as far as you can, and then see what you find, see where you're at.
Yeah, I agree with both Ben and Peter. That's it 100%. I admit I don't know that I've ever really experienced writer's block. If anything, it was more like avoidance, right? Like like I know I've got to get something done. I've got it in my head somewhere, and for whatever reason I'm just procrastinating. And to both their points, it's just really just sitting down and writing, even if it's something completely irrelevant, right? Just knocking it out. I wouldn't say worst habit, but my challenge sometimes it's when I'm outlining like basically key points that I want within a story. Sometimes I just get tired of doing it and I go down the easy path, right? And unfortunately what that means is, or not unfortunately, but it just means I have to go back and revise the outline a few times so that it's more interesting, like it's a meatier story. And otherwise, my readers would get really bored really fast because it'll like peter out, so I just, again, it's the same thing, right? You write whatever you can, get it on the page, and then go back and say, all right, what part sucks? All right, let me work on that, or what part did I just clearly not even take enough time in my storytelling, and really focusing on that. So Ron Dell says, hi, Lisa, can you review the publication process? Risa and I are into final edits, and I'm curious as to what happens next and afterward. My book is for the RIZE imprint. Thanks. Hey, Ron, awesome to see you. I'm so excited to hear that you guys are in the final editing stage. I know there have been some pauses, so I can't wait to see the final version. So our publication process is once that collaboration between the author and the editor is complete and you both agree that, yep, this baby is done. The editor then sends that manuscript to me. I then pull in our product managers, or one of them at least, and she will then work with the author so she'll work with you on working on back jacket copy, working on your log line, working on your bio, if there's any kind of dedication that you want to have within the story, within the book itself. She'll reach out to you to have you fill out. We have a couple of different questionnaires that we ask you to complete that help us when we start marketing and doing publicity. We provide to you a marketing plan template to help you in that process as well. And then we also typically reach out to the author to find out if you had any ideas in terms of the cover design. And we then provide those concepts to our cover designer, who he then typically comes back with 2 to 3 variations of a cover. And, we ask you if you have a preference, and then we take it from there. Once the cover's done and we've got the log line and we have all that amazing information at that juncture, typically, well, one of 2 things can happen. If the cover's done and the interior file is fully formatted, some authors like to go through and do a final proofread of that manuscript, which is fine. All we ask is, like, don't come back and say, I don't like this font. To be honest, I don't care. It's the font you're getting, so suck it up. Now, if you find typos, that's a whole nother thing. And yes, of course, we're going to address it. If you look at it and decide you want to rewrite entire chapters, tough shit, suck it up. You already agreed that it's done. The baby's done. So just kind of putting it out there. We've only ever had to do an intervention like that, I want to say, guys, like twice or something like that in the last 7 years. And usually, honestly, if you've gone through that editing process, that collaborative process, and you see it where it's basically in a final format, and you're like, oh my God, I need to rewrite, blah, 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 you're probably overthinking it. Actually, I know you're overthinking it, right? So, anyway, so you'd have an opportunity to have that like final read through. And then after that, it then goes to our manufacturer, and it also, all the key metadata, as us little tech heads like to call it, others would know it more like, all the main information that's needed for a book when it goes into publication, and it's made available at all your favorite bookstores and all of your favorite libraries and so on. That is, as soon as we submit it to our distributor, it's then sent out to all those amazing, fantastic places. And then at that point, usually it's anywhere from 9 to 12 months from the point that the book was completed to the point that it actually goes out and it's made available to the general public. Now, Ron, you will actually have an opportunity, if there is a date that has significant meaning to you or is significant meaning for the book, our product manager will come back to you and say, hey, so, like if you have a preference for the book to come out, within this quarter of like 2024, then, let us know, right? Like, she'll let you know the earliest date that it can possibly be made available to the general populace. And she'll give you a sense of the different time frames that makes sense, if that makes sense. Yeah. And then after that, really in parallel, what happens, our product managers are also sending what's called a one sheet. So one sheet is basically, it's the 2-sentence summary of the story. It's the back jacket copy. It's an advanced review copy, which is a digital file of the final book. Usually it's also the cover of the book, and it goes to the Seymour agency, which is the agency that represents us. And they then send it out for potential audiobook, translation, film, TV, I mean, you name it, right? Any kind of licensing activity. And I think, and then our product managers also send everything out to reviews and bloggers and so on. So to get more buzz going around the story. So I think I hit everything. Did I miss anything, guys?
I don't think so. I would just stress that it's not, once the author turns it over, the author is still involved. It's not like, well, it's like Lisa said, some things we're not going to change because it doesn't need to be changed. But just recently we had the issue with I think the production crew went through and changed some grammar that was wrong on purpose. And the author caught that and came back and said, wait a minute, this was misspelled. It was a signboard for a psychic, which is kind of funny to have a psychic who can see the future but can't spell a word on her signboard. But it was meant to be funny. It was very subtle. So the spell checker caught it, and the production crew changed it. But the author said, wait, you can't change that. It's got to be this. And so the author is still involved, and that's the point I'm making here.
Peter, anything else that we may have missed? Or
to Ben's point is that once you arrive at a final finished piece with your manuscript, you've gone through several edits and it's agreed upon by both of you. Don't say, oh, wait, I want to do one more revision and then change 4 or 5 chapters. I mean, it's a complete waste of time, because now you're throwing the whole process out of whack and making more work. And like Ben was saying, it's like usually your first instinct is correct. So that's what I would just go with that.
Yeah, 100%. So, and then Ron asks, says, this is very helpful. At what point do I send out for blurbs to be included in the book? So in blurbs, meaning like other authors who are giving you a recommendation or giving your book a recommendation, I would say start sending out the second that you and your editor have agreed this is the final edit. Start sending it out and getting those blurbs, because the more blurbs that we have on hand prior to actually starting to send it out for potential book reviews. And just a clarification, we actually usually we start sending out for book reviews 4 to 6 months before the publication date. And the reason we wait until then is because typically it's going to get ignored if we send it out too far in advance. Like there's no benefit to the book reviewer or the blogger if it's sent out way too far in advance. So, but yeah, if I were you, I'd make a list of like your dream list of who you would love to have, review your book for you and give you a blurb. And honestly, Ron, start reaching out to them now. Cause at this juncture, I usually get asked maybe 2 or 3 times a year to do a blurb for somebody. But when you're talking about like your dream guys, they're doing like 30, 40 a year. So the more heads up that you can give them. I hate that sentence. I'm like rewriting it in my head. Anyway, so I'm like, that was awful. But if you can give them as much heads up as possible, they are so appreciative, because so many people will wait until the very last minute and say, hey, I love your work. Would you do a blurb for me? And they're already drowning in their own work, and they already have a backlist of a ton of stories to do it. So definitely, line them up now and get ready for the minute you and Risa are done, because that'll be definitely the time to start. Let's see. Teha asks, may I know on what application or software do you like to write? I don't know, Peter, do you have a special software that you use?
No, just Word in a notebook with pen and ink. Oh,
how about you?
Old school.
How about you, Ben?
If it's again, we got to know which one's the lazy one of us here. But if it's poetry, I'll write in a journal, pen and ink, and my process is to get a first thought, best thought down on paper. Then I'll flip the page and I'll clean it up into the format that I want to see it. And then the third version of that will be when I finally get back around to type it up. But if it's a short story or that novel that's still waiting for me to get back to it, I like to type those in, because I hate to type stuff up. And if it's already typed, it's easier for me. But poems, I like the pen on paper. But longer pieces typed.
Yeah, I use Word, I use pen and ink and paper, and I actually use Google Docs. But I usually use Google Docs for things that I know I'm going to be sharing with others, because it's much easier and it's more secure to share it with Google Docs than it is to use like Microsoft Word and then send that Word document out through email. That's just a royal pain in the butt to continue to track all the different changes that happens. So
Yeah.
And Google Docs, if you do it in Word and then you cut and paste it over into Google Docs, it sometimes takes your format and tells you you were wrong when you were really right. No, I wanted it indented. So you have to go back through and indent and tab first lines and that.
Yeah, you got to go back and double check everything, definitely. Margaret Buchanan says, what is the average number of books produced yearly? Margaret, I'm assuming you mean by us, not by the world. Because I can Google that question. Like I could research it for you, but we actually target between 10 and 15 books per imprint per year. So in total, that's between 20 and 30 books per year. Okay, yeah, Margaret just confirmed that. Yeah, that's for Rise and Running Wild. Yeah, so each one, Running Wild and Rise, it's about 10 to 15. At one point, we were going to target between 15 and 20. And I'll be honest, that's a lot of work right now for our little old press, or little young-ish press. So we decided actively to pull back and really focus on like nailing down and really optimizing our processes and like how we get books out to market and how we get publicity and how we get marketing. And once that's kind of like more of a well-oiled machine, then we'll probably turn around and publish more books per year. But right now, we don't want to give up the quality of the stories that we put out to market. We don't want to make things worse by completely overwhelming everyone, even though I'm sure right now everyone's like, well, you're already overwhelming us because you guys keep buying all these great stories, but that's a whole nother thing. So as both Ben and Peter can attest to, because I think the three of us usually end up with the majority of the titles that are, waiting to be edited. So yeah. But I mean, I get that. That's what we do. So, we find the great stories and then work with the authors on making them, the best they absolutely possibly can be. So, I don't know, guys, do you want to add anything to that or?
Just that rewarding process from the editor point of view. There are a lot of them, but they're all different, and each author is different. So it's a good learning experience, I think, from the editing side.
Yeah, and it's funny. We have we have an editor who's been working with us since pretty much the beginning, and she had some medical challenges, and I actually caught up with her the other day, and she said, "Oh, I miss editing." Which it's funny because like if you talk to like the me from when I was in like, middle school or like high school, those words would never come out of my mouth. So it was kind of funny to hear a friend say, and again, one of our really esteemed editors say like, oh, I miss editing. I can't wait to get back to it. So. Holly Rose says, hearkening back to when Ben said an intentional misspelling was almost wrongly fixed. Do you like for an author to write their own style sheet? All right, Ben, since you're mentioning that, why don't we start with you?
I said that? I gotta really start listening to what I say.
You're like, I just talk. I don't listen to myself.
I think not necessarily a style sheet, but as I read through novels, I'll pick up on what the author's style is. And sometimes I have to catch myself to saying, why don't we delete that? but then, you know, keep reading and you pick up on, oh, that's why we don't have to delete that, or we shouldn't delete that. So it's really the creative aspects of each author. Sometimes it does come across as being cute, I guess is a good way to say it, or overwritten. And I'll go back to the author there and say, you know, you were using your own style without getting overly dramatic, or well, today it was calling alcohol a drop of fire. And this is the last 3 pages of your novel, and you do this now? No. But it's good conversations, and they're you know, he may come back to me and say, absolutely, you've never heard of drop of fire, putting alcohol in your coffee. Yeah, there's a reason, I think, but okay. But that kind of interaction is you'll see the author's style.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree. It's like getting used to the author's style and communicating with the author as well is very helpful, because we want to see the book, read it for the first time as a fresh reader, so that there's no hints, no clues, no anything, where it's going in fresh, and makes it more exciting, more easy to engage with, so that if we do have questions or style questions, like Ben said, we can always go back and ask the author, what are you trying to do here? What is this thing? And then when they tell me, like, the rest of it falls into place like Legos. So that's kind of how I approach it. I don't want a cheat sheet, at least not at first.
And it was the point where the psychics signboard out on the sidewalk with the misspellings. It was for a style sheet there, and say, this is me being showing some humor, and humor's rough anyway. If it's well done, it can be very subtle, and you just enjoy it for, okay, this is the ride we're on. Shocking Pink was full of humor. And it was a novel about, well, it is a novel about, it was when I was editing it, and it still is. The porn industry and the character is basically just a good character profile of people who work in the porn industry, but there was all kinds of humor throughout. And I didn't need the author to tell me, hey, I'm trying to be funny here. Did it work? If the author has to ask that, it didn't work. But no, it was the author's style, and made it work. It was very subtle humor, and some overtly, some covertly, but you know, it all came together and worked nicely.
Yeah, I mean, I think the bottom line is it just has to be consistent, right? So Holly Rose clarified, but I mean, if say an author wants British spellings of words like humor and glamour, or choices like humor HUMOUR and glamour GLAMOUR. Again, it's just consistency is the bottom line. Or if you know, it's something where it's associated with a specific character so Holly, to piggyback on your comment, the character is of British descent, and so whenever that character speaks the words like the, you know, glamour is spelled with an OUR, or they say, you know, like curry, which just means food in, you know, Great Britain, you know, things like that. But it should be something that is easily picked up by the editor. Again, to both Peter and Ben's points, you know, our job is really to read it as if we are the reader, and then figure in, like, is this working or not? And if it's not working, asking the author, what was your intention with this? So we can figure out, okay, how can we help resolve this? I mean, and that's really, in my opinion, what the job of the editor is, right? And it's us using our knowledge, our experience, and all everything that we've done to that date to feed and help the author in that. I honestly do, if an author is going to do something really more complex with their characterizations within the story, I do suggest that you have your own little, not necessarily a cheat sheet, right? Not like a style guide, but, you know, annotate for yourself what you're doing and why somewhere, right? Have your own notes so that when your editor comes to you and says, well, why'd you do this here? You don't go, do what, where? I don't know what you're talking about. Because you did it so long ago, you totally forgot you even did it. And believe me, that happens. So Teja says, do you make schedules to write a chapter or write when you feel like writing? I know, Peter, you're in the throes of it now, so why don't you answer that question?
I'm in the what now?
And you're writing now. You're in the throes of it. You're in the middle of it.
Yes, throes. Okay. Let's hit a specific word count, like 500 to 1,000 words. 1,000 words, 1,500 if I'm feeling really good, really into the character and the action. Chapter by chapter can work as well. That's just not my style. That's not how I approach it. But whatever style works, whatever style keeps you in your chair writing with whatever method you want to use it.
Yep. What do you think, Ben?
Yeah, and as far as poetry goes, I write poetry every day. But that novel that I mentioned before is setting at 30,000 words, waiting for me to. Maybe I need to make a schedule and get back to it. But it's just when, okay, I've got an idea for the next part of it. Let me advance the 1,000 words or however much comes out when it feels right to sit down and write it. But I'm actually working on it's a collection. It's called A Close and Distant Friend that I'm writing. It's poetry, and I'm writing every Tuesday one part of it every Tuesday. So Tuesday is A Close and Distant Friend dedicated day, and which is really kind of interesting because you see how your ideas shift and change and what words you use on Tuesday. And there are some themes going through it that you wouldn't expect, but I've got about 35 of them now with going to 52 for the year. But so that's, from a poetry point of view, it's kind of a creative way of seeing what words you do use and how your ideas change from week to week.
Yeah, I usually.
Welcome to try it.
Yeah. Now, I usually set goals. Like, I know how many words I can produce in a day. Usually I'll set a target based on whatever my goal is. And that target usually, if I'm actively writing a piece, it's usually anywhere between 800 and 1,000 words a day. I can type pretty fast, but I also usually go into it with a high level outline. So I have a sense of what I'm actually going to be doing when I sit down. Like, I'm not just free writing it. I also don't do it chapter by chapter. I do it, it's more so like word count, but I also can tell based on the complexity of the outline that I've created, generally speaking, how long the work is going to be. And so that then will help me figure out, like, okay, this has X number of narratives within it. Based on how complex this outline is, this is probably going to end up being around 80,000 words when all is said and done. So then based on that, I need to set aside X amount of time. And, maybe I need to do a long weekend away so I can knock out like 5,000 words a day. Like that kind of thing. So, if you're not there yet in terms of your own writing and understanding like how much you can get done in a day and that kind of thing, don't worry, you'll get there. We all get there. It's just goes back to that, just having your butt in the chair and making it happen. So
just know that the more you know about writing, the slower you're going to
go. Okay, Margaret Buchanan says, what piques an editor to continue to read a submission? How is the editor hooked? All right, why don't we start with Ben this time?
Because I'm writing down Peter's quotes. The more you know, the slower you go. I'm writing that down first.
You're writing that down first? The more you know, the slower you go? Okay.
Yeah, which is great. But I think it's different hooks for all of us. If Peter says it's good writing, I'm hooked because he knows good writing, and I trust his opinion there. But I'll look for the action to be picked up and drawn in to the story, the setting, the characters, what the characters are saying, what they're doing, how fast can I get into the story. And that's not to say rush it into the first story or the first line, somebody getting killed. You don't have to do that necessarily, but it just helps to have interesting characters grab you up front to say you want to know more about me, and that's just good. I think that's a good story hook. So some personal aspects of picking up one of the submissions is where they start. If the author starts with a quote, and it's I remember Escape Route used quoted Emerson and Dylan on the same page to start the novel. I said, okay, let's see what you do with Dylan and Emerson and go from there. So that's more of a personal hook, but I think the overlap with the other editors is the being drawn into the story with characters, plot, storyline, and good writing.
Yeah, I agree. My biggest draw is when there's a strong need from the very beginning, from when it opens up, the character needs something, and being drawn into that, wanting to find out if the character is going to fulfill that need, get what they want, what they're searching for, as well as while they're doing that, build the world so that we know exactly where we are. A lot of writers that I worked with before, previously, they've started writing and it's all dialogue. All dialogue, because they see the place in their head, but they don't see the actual environment. And that builds such a great story. Some of the best novels I've edited have just blossomed because of the setting that they've added. It just works with the characters, and it works with the author, works with the reader, because now you're fully engaged in more than one sense, kind of thing.
Yeah, and I'm actually going to give you the reverse. It's not, for me, it's not like what piques an editor. It's like I can tell if a book needs to ditch like the first 5, 10, 20 pages, right? Because a lot of times we have a tendency, we're writing the story because we're discovering the story. And because we're discovering the story, we may not realize, because if no one else has looked at it yet, that really everything that's being provided is backstory. There isn't actually a story yet. You're setting the scene, you're creating the world and all that. And I actually had a debate with one of our authors who said, he was like, well, my favorite books are like, Tolkien, and that's what Tolkien does. And I'm like, and how many years ago was this put out? Like in today's world, if you're going to write a great story, and you want something that is really going to engage your reader in modern society, it's got to have some kind of hook, whether it's, whether it's a great quote, if it's a made up quote by a character, within the story, if it's you're being thrown right into the action, if it's, a dialogue that helps build that scene around it, like the world around. But, that dialogue, that engagement is so active, it's actually introducing to the reader, like, what's the problem that's happening, right? What's the problem these characters are trying to solve? Things like that. I mean, there are just so many different ways that you can actually pull in a reader and really hook them, reader, editor, whatever, that, I mean, it's like, it's infinite. And there are just as many ways that you can kind of kill the story for that editor or kill the story for the reader. So it's just making sure that you're really getting that reader engaged from the beginning in some way into whatever that problem is that these characters are trying to solve, or within that world. So Caroline says, what is your sorry.
I was just going to say, sometimes we'll catch ourselves saying your story starts here, get rid of the rest. And in the short stories, in the anthology of short stories, I'll see some stories where they end before, with another 2 pages to read or 3 or 4 pages to read. So you don't need it. It ends here. Give your reader some credit to know that, okay, this is where it makes sense to end it. So the beginning and the end are so important. And everything in between.
Caroline says, what is your favorite kind of book stories each of you like to work on the most? Fiction, essays, nonfiction? I don't know, Peter, what do you think? What's your favorite?
I tend to do fiction and creative nonfiction, just because I like the format. They're interchangeable in terms of the prose style usually, but that's just my personal preference. Mm-hmm. But I like making creative nonfiction as fun as and as interesting as fiction is by putting all the elements in there. So just to build up both types of writing.
Got it. How about you, Ben? Ben.
I've done mostly the fiction is what I've done the most of, but the creative nonfiction was interesting to work on as well. That's nothing is better than something. Something is better than nothing. Sorry. And then with the short stories, they can be my favorite and they can be the least favorite because they need to tell a story, and especially determining which stories tell the story and to be included. So the ones that are rejected are usually the ones that have a lot of words but not much story, not much storytelling. So that's a good reason to like the stories.
I don't have. It just needs to be well written and a good story, because in reality, an essay is a story, a journalism article is a story, a memoir is a story, nonfiction is a story. It's all just stories, right? But with different structures and different known formats, I guess you could say. So, as long as it's good, I'm in.
Even the essays need a voice, and the voice of the author. If it's really dry, it's probably going to lose me. If I can hear and see the authors and the author's intent, the essays can be fun to work with as well. Although we don't have that many at Running Wild Press.
No, I think we've only so far done one essay anthology, which was Red Flags. And it's not for any specific reason. It's just, that's what we've done so far. So Tejas says, if you ever feel lazy to write, what would you tell yourself to push yourself forward? I don't know, guys. What do you think? I can tell Ben has a smart ass comment that's just waiting. It's waiting.
Ben being a smart ass?
I'm a prolific poet because I'm a lazy fiction writer. It always comes up. It always comes back. But I think the one thing that keeps you writing is remember that you like to write. If that's the feel of it, the place of it, the process of it. Is it going to be perfect? Rarely. You're going to have to go back and something Peter posted the other day was chop, 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 and you work on your editing, and that's part of it too. If you've got to be ready to critique yourself first, and remember, tell yourself that I like doing this, whether I'm a best-selling, well-known author or whether I'm just here in my dark corner in the castle, in the dungeon, in the oubliette writing. It's still what you like to do. So remind yourself that, I like to do this. And it's why do you go to practice every day? And my writing is just practice every day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with everything Ben said. One of the other methods I choose is I always have a specific time that I start writing. Like at 9 o'clock or 9:30, I'm going to write till at least 10 o'clock or 10:30, just to throw out numbers. And whether I write a chapter or
Uh-oh. I think his Wi-Fi went wacky again. There you go. I think
So
maybe.
Lost my train of thought.
Everything from you agreeing with everything I said.
Having specific time, it's your time. I mean, it's something that you're doing all by yourself that doesn't include anybody else. So it's like it's your sacred time. I would treat it as such.
I just give myself deadlines. If I have a deadline, I know I have to have something done, I make it happen. So, yeah. Margaret says, what are your pet peeves editors see that will reject a submission? So do you have any pet peeves associated with like submissions, like thematically, things that people may do that'll cause it to get rejected?
Weird fonts. Sometimes so things done just to be clever for clever's sake. Oh, I want to be different. Like, no, it's just the words is what we're interested in. The words and the characters and the stories. Don't have to be clever. Don't have to be anything other than just a writer, an author. My 2 cents.
Yeah. And I think that in some of our editing meetings, when we're selecting those selection meetings, I'll catch myself saying one thing more often that it's been done. And so the trying to connect it one to an idea that's been done so well, well, it's not To Kill a Mockingbird, it's To Kill a Bluebird. And, no, please, no. That kind of thing, trying to connect it or build a short story or a novel on someone else's work. This is Animal Farm, where they are really all equal, and you're taking too many liberties, and it might work as a short story, as a piece of humor that you're building on somebody else's work. That happens all the time, the ekphrasis part. But if it gets too long and the joke isn't funny anymore, that's it's been done.
Yeah, all the above. Someone trying to be too clever, someone the been there, done that. Yeah, I mean, honestly, typically it's it always comes down to the writing. And we so there's like phase 1, right, where we're going through the submissions and picking ones that we'll give an offer to. The biggest, fastest way that you can get rejected after we've already sent you an acceptance letter is if even before we've even started the editing process, you start arguing with us about the story. And believe it or not, we've had a couple of authors who like it was like, okay, great. Like one guy actually said, do I have to have an editor? Well, yeah, yeah, you do, right? And another person came forward and it was like, well, I don't want an editor. I just want you to publish my work. I'm like, then you should self-publish. Well, I want you to do it. I'm like, no, that's not how this works. Because we're not saying, or another one, we had one author, we made her an offer and she said, well, I want to know what all the edits are going to be. And I said, well, but we haven't even assigned you an editor yet. Well, I want to know what that editor is going to want to change now. That doesn't make any logical sense, right? For a variety of reasons, that makes absolutely no sense. So I understand the anxiety of, as all of us do, right? I understand the anxiety of writing, spending so much time on a piece of work, and the thought of having somebody else going through it and making a lot of changes. But again, understand our process is always, we pick our editors because they're collaborative, right? They're not going to come to you and say, you have to do whatever. It's, if they identify something in the work, the whole purpose is to go back to you and ask, hey, what what was the intent of this section? What were you trying to do? What's the point of it? So you guys can make it work. So you make the piece stronger. That doesn't mean they're going to, I mean, there are pieces that we've all gotten before that really almost the only work that was needed for it were some misspellings, right? Like some typos. And that, you know, that's fabulous. And then there are others that, you know, it's a great concept and there's just that more that needs to be done with it. But it's that having that kind of defensiveness before we even start a conversation, that'll quickly get you like, you know what, never mind, we're good. You know, we think you would probably be better with another publisher. So.
Yeah, I had one author who he's like, I have to make changes. Well, yeah, I'm making suggestions to make the book better. Well, no, it's perfect just the way it is. No, dude, seriously. I've been doing this for years. Okay, I can make it this better. No, it's perfect the way it is. It starts arguing with me and then making up lies. It's like, dude, no, man, we stopped working with him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, honestly, if instead of that being his response, if his response was, "Hey, do you mind if we have a Zoom call, or if we have a call? I want to understand what the feedback is and why." Then that's a whole different story, right? Because who knows? He could have come back with reasons or suggestions that, you know, Peter turned around and said, "Oh, no, you know what? I see it now. All right, this makes sense to me," right? Or maybe it's like, instead of revising this whole section, you're adding a line, like literally like just adding one line of clarification. You know, who knows? But that clearly means the author it just wasn't a good fit. So let's see. I think that's all the questions we have. Holy crap. It's almost the top of the hour. Oh no, wait, I'm wrong. Wait, is it? No. Yeah, that was all the questions so far. I scrolled the wrong way. See what happens when you're not paying attention? So yes, if you guys
I had that conversation today with an author where there was a section in the novel earlier that built the personality of the character, but then you found out later on the character said something that didn't fit with that personality that he'd already had created. And he said, well, I really can't imagine that character doing that in that situation. And I came back to him and said, what about the reader that you want to have the book in their hands? What will they imagine? Not what you imagine. You know the character really well, but now you're trying to portray that personality to a set of readers. So they're good conversations, and I think they're writer conversations, and you've got to be open to it from the editor or from the author point of view.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. Yeah, because it's not we're not dictators. You know, we're not sitting here saying you absolutely have to do this. Now, mind you, there are times where we'll, you know, come back and say, all right, you know, like there's one of our novellas, the author, I had a lot of questions and he came back. It's very, the work is very conceptual in nature. And so, you know, my point to him was, like, I get conceptually speaking what you want to accomplish and why, but the bottom line is it's all about the reader. So you really, you know, you need to figure out what you want your bottom line to be, what you want your end goal to be for this novella, and how you're going to keep the reader engaged. Because as this is structured right now, as this has been set up right now, you're going to lose the reader within the first 20 pages. So, you know, it's really helping the author figure that out. So Caroline says it's all about collaboration. Well, in our world, it pretty much is, but I don't know about in other worlds. And then Ron Dell says, this session's very helpful. I work well with my editor and she's good. Thank you all. Oh, thank you so much, Ron, for that feedback. And by the way, if you are an author who's been working with our editors, I love getting feedback on our editors. I love to hear, you know, like how it went and, you know, what, and because honestly, our editors give us feedback as well on the authors that they work with and on the stories. And we take all that to heart. So, definitely, if you've worked with one of us, let us know. Give us that feedback. Margaret, you're going to love working with Cody. He is fabulous. And we all know that Ben and Peter are amazing editors. So no question with that. And with that, I think we're actually, that's it. So this went really fast, guys. Amazing questions. Thanks, Ron. Thanks, Margaret. Thanks, Caroline. Thanks, Teha. Thank you all. Oh, and Holly, thank you again. Looking forward to seeing you guys next week on Thursday between 5 and 6 p.m. Pacific time, 8 and 9 p.m. Eastern time. Till then, have a fantastic week, and we'll see you soon. Bye.
Next week.